Still using SSH keys, RDP logins, and database credentials? It's time to access your infrastructure like it's no longer 1999. StrongDM is the only modern infrastructure access platform. It creates a seamless, secure, and observable air gap between your staff and the critical infrastructure that powers your company. Instantly revoke access to every database, Kubernetes cluster, or server with a click. Automatically log every query, SSH, and kube control command to know who did what, when, and where across your stack. Eliminate credentials from end-user workflows to deploy access that's zero trust and least privilege by default. Trusted by your peers at Peloton, SoFi, Yext, and Chime, StrongDM is the only way to deploy secure access controls in a way folks love to use. But who believes an ad? Check it out for yourself with a no BS demo. Sign up at www.strongdm.com/get-a-demo.
Cloudcast Media presents from the massive studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is the Cloudcast with Aaron Delp and Brian Gracely, bringing you the best of cloud computing from around the world.
Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome back to the Cloudcast. We are coming to you live from the massive Cloudcast studios here in Raleigh, North Carolina. Hope everybody is doing well. Another Sunday Perspective show, and I'm going to go ahead and apologize up front. The pollen season, the sort of time of year when, at least for me, somebody who has allergies, kicks in very, very hard here in North Carolina. March is just kicking in. My voice probably sounds horrible. My eyes are itchy and my voice is raspy, and so I apologize for that up front. I want to kind of talk. This is going to be a shorter show today, not because I don't really have anything to talk about, but just there's a lot going on. And, want to spend the appropriate amount of time, but not too much time on a couple of things. I'm going to cover two things. One is kind of some perspective. This is a Sunday Perspective show. We usually sort of talk about, history of technology and some other perspectives. But obviously, as most people know, if you're paying attention at all to what's going on in the news in the world, there's some bad stuff going on, especially in Europe and in Ukraine. And it sort of hit me. Obviously, a lot of us have been watching what's going on, and the pictures are terrible, the stories are terrible, and so forth. And but it kind of really hit me. One of the things that we get is we get a certain amount of statistics about the audience of this show, and one of the things that we get is what countries they're in. Now, I wish we had far better statistics about who listened. Not that we want to sell you anything or push things to you, but it's just nice to know who you're talking with, who you're engaging with. But unfortunately, we don't have that kind of information. We don't get it from our podcast aggregators or any of those sort of things. So we just sort of get numbers. And so unfortunately, unless people have reached out to us, unfortunately, a lot of our audience to us is numbers. And we do know, certain things about you in terms of what you're interested in. And lots of people reach out and follow the Twitter account and so forth. But anyways, the reason I bring all this up is, I was looking, at some of the numbers around where people listen, and I went sort of scrolling through, and I realized that at least over the last 5 weeks, and things are pretty consistent from week to week, sometimes things grow, but there was at least 19 people from the Ukraine who listened to the show. And then I looked at the show over the last week, and there was no people from the Ukraine who listened to the show, zero. And I don't necessarily know how to interpret that. To a certain extent, I hope that maybe that means that those people are, focused on obviously much more important things, life and death sort of things. But most importantly, I hope they're safe. And I don't know, or if, unfortunately, gosh, I hate to say that, they will come back and listen to the show. But it kind of gave me some perspective. I mean, obviously, we're all trying to have some perspective and help out in some way that you can. Maybe making a donation, or you're communicating with people over there, or whatever you're doing. But it really gave me some perspective, because what that means in the simplest terms is, for the last 5 weeks, somebody was getting some value out of this show. They were learning something. They were spending some amount of time with us. And they were getting some value out of it, and they were focused on life and technology and learning. And at least for this last week, that wasn't afforded to them. That wasn't a luxury or a freedom or a capability or any of those things that they had. And they chose not to spend any time with us. And like I said, my only hope is that whoever they are safe. We would love to know if you are in the Ukraine and you listen to the show, and you're back to listening to the show at some point in time when maybe some scrape of normalcy comes along. Let us know. Let us know if you're okay, or let us know your story. We would love to know. I wish, like I said, we knew more about specifically our audience, the specifics of our audience. We don't. Anyways, that was sort of all I had here at the beginning of the show. I typically do some sort of introduction. I do want to tie into kind of this concept of change because, just like those 19 folks in the Ukraine, change happened to them very fast. And what I want to kind of dig into a little bit in the second half of the show, right after the break, is, what happens to us in tech. Sometimes change happens fast and sometimes change happens slow. And how do we put some of those things in perspective? So I'm going to dive into that right after the break.
Today's episode of the Cloudcast is sponsored by Datadog, a real-time monitoring platform that unifies metrics, traces, and logs into one tightly integrated platform. Datadog APM empowers developer teams to identify anomalies, resolve issues, and improve application performance. Begin collecting stack traces, visualizing them as flame graphs, organizing them into profile types such as CPU, I/O, and more. Teams can search for specific profiles, correlate them with distributed traces, and identify slow or underperforming code for analysis and optimization. Plus, with Datadog APM Live Search, you can perform searches across the full stream of ingested traces generated by your application over the last 15 minutes. Try Datadog APM free with a 14-day trial, and Datadog will send you a free t-shirt. Visit datadog.com/APM-Cloudcast to get started. That's datadog.com/APM-Cloudcast.
And we're back. And, as I talked about a little bit in the top of the show, the sort of through line that I've been thinking about for today's perspective was really kind of about change and change. The top of the show was a little bit heavy. Apologize for that, but it kind of got us thinking. But a lot of times for the people that are listening to the show, 99% of the time, you're thinking about change in terms of, the industry, in terms of your job, your career, and so forth. And so for me, one of the things was I'm actually going through a job change this week. I've been in the same role for just about 6 years, and really enjoyed the role. Was an opportunity to really work on new technologies. A lot of I was very focused around Kubernetes, and after 6 years, sometimes you just want to do something new, and so it got me sort of thinking, because what we see from what we're hearing from a lot of people, because as we all hear about sort of the great resignation and the great set of changes, and we've talked about that on some of the other previous Sunday shows. There's a lot of people that they're changing jobs. That often happens a lot in our industry, but things like the pandemic allowing people to work from home, and the opportunity to work for different places that maybe didn't let you work from a remote location in the past, and technology changing quite a bit, whether it's the cloud impacting things or open source impacting things or just whatever. A lot of the questions that we get from people is they go through this sort of rationalizing of what do I want to do, and they're trying to figure out. You're always, when you're looking at new jobs or you're looking at new opportunities or you're evaluating what you do today and into the future, you're really looking for some combination of, typically, I want to be challenged. I want to be able to make an impact in what I do. I'd like to work on something that's probably going to be, in a lot of cases, not everybody, but it's a visible technology, or it's a visible project. You want it to be sometimes very mainstream and so forth. And so, you're kind of trying to figure out, am I picking something that's stable today because that's what I need in my life? Is it something that, has maybe a lot of risk, but maybe a lot of reward, and all those sort of things. And, I think for myself and for Aaron, we've done the show for 12 years. I think if we counted them up, we've probably been through maybe more than 12 jobs combined between us in those 12 years. And so we've gone through periods of time when we changed jobs a lot. Some things worked out or some things didn't work out. Some things were within our control, and other times they were outside of our control. But but we've changed jobs. In some cases, like I mentioned, I've been through this one for about 6 years, and Aaron, I think, has been in his role now for 3 or 4 years, and he's been through a couple of, 2 and 3 and 4 year stints. And, I've been through some short ones and some long ones. And, I think as him and I talk about it, what we realize is that, there's a couple things that you can control and there's a couple things you can't control. And as it relates to the sort of change narrative that I talked about at the beginning of the show, you don't always have control over when things are going to change. And so what you're really looking for is you're trying to figure out, how much of the underlying thing that I'm going to work on will be certain or uncertain, right? And because different people have different tolerances for, change and uncertainty, and, people are at different stages in their lives. They have a wife and kid, or, spouse and kids, or, they're older or younger, or whatever they're doing. So that's a thing that comes into play. And then you're trying to figure out, am I at a stage of my career, or am I looking for a job that is going to, elevate my title? Is it going to elevate me in my career? Am I going to work for people that I know? Am I going to work for people that I don't know? And, so the best thing you're ultimately looking for is, kind of a realization that, there are going to be points and times in your career when, you have to sort of look to appreciate, even if it's for a short period of time, the things that are really great. You get to work on a really great project. You get to work on a technology that, takes off from, very early days to becoming very big and mainstream. You get to work with, a really cool manager or a really smart set of people, or, you get to work on something that, is a once in a lifetime, you're going to get recognized for something or whatever it might be. But the reality is, you're probably going to work on a whole bunch of duds, right? Technology is filled with things that had a lot of promise, or people thought, well, if we could just do this, it'll be great. And sometimes things just don't work out. And so I think in the context of, thinking about that is that fast change or slow change, you kind of don't know. And I relate it back to, our listeners who up till a week ago, thought they knew what was going on. They were listening for a reason. They thought they had a path laid out, and then change happened quickly to them. But before that, change is probably happening, somewhat slow. And, in the case of me changing jobs, I got into the job. It's kind of the craziest story, but I got into the job that I was in previously, after having written something that was not disparaging, but maybe not the most positive thing in the world about the company and the technology that I went to work for. And, it turns out I ended up working for that thing, and my eyes were open to it, and I learned a lot more about it. And, it happened to do really, really well. It was a, great 6-year period of time. But, before that, I had 3 or 4 different situations in which, I literally didn't, things went badly. And you just never know when the next really good thing is. And sometimes when the things are really good, you have to, sometimes have some ability to step back and realize that. And that's a really hard thing when you're in the middle of a job, and it's, even if it's going well, it feels like it's overwhelming sometimes. People are calling you for other opportunities, and so, it's important to try and create some sort of mechanism, and I don't know any great way of doing it, but of assessing, are things going well? Am I in the middle of something that has the level of change that you appreciate, that you have some control over, that's fast enough for you or slow enough for you, or whatever it might be? Do you feel like you're well compensated? Do the people that you work with, believe in you, and so forth? And so, in the context of change, it is really important to sort of have some sort of mental framework, because in your mind, you're typically like, I want everything. I want a great job, and I want to get paid, for what I'm worth, and maybe more than I'm worth. And I want opportunities to do new things, and I always want to be on the leading edge, or whatever it is. But the reality is, you probably only get to pick or choose 1 or 2 of those things. And then certain things are going to be into your control and other things aren't. And again, how fast those things change around you or with you, you don't know. And so, this is, me sort of going, hey, even when things are great, or even when things are bad, find a way to appreciate the things that are good, find some goodness in what they are. Because you never know when things are going to change. You never know when you are going to change your mindset. And it might change overnight. It might change over multiple years. But I think the world has sort of told us over the last couple of years, whether it was pandemics or wars or politics or the sports that you enjoy or whatever, there's been a lot of things that we can't control and a lot of things that we never would have expected. And, so you gotta find something in there that gets you through it. And, with that, I had something else sort of planned up for this week. I'll probably push it off till next week. But yeah, I think, sometimes things change really fast and sometimes things go slow and sometimes we just have to sort of have some appreciation for what's going on. And, if you get a chance to help out the folks in the Ukraine through some way, if it motivates you to do that, you can make a donation or something. That would be great. I'm sure, for the folks that right now don't know where they're going to live or where they're going to get their next meal or, whether their family members are still alive, they'd appreciate anything that we can do to help. So I know the Cloudcast community has always been great about, having a big heart and caring about other people and reaching out. So we'd encourage that. Whether you do it through Red Cross or something Ukraine specific or something that just sort of connects with what you do, that would be awesome. So anyways, a little bit of perspective, a little bit heavy this week, but it was kind of the things that were weighing on my mind. And, I've had some change in my job and career, but, the folks that we mentioned at the top of the show have much more change going on. But like I said, we hope they're safe. Hopefully you hope they're safe as well. And with that, I'm going to wrap it up. We will get back to the interviews on Wednesday, and we will talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to The Cloudcast. Please visit thecloudcast.net to find more shows, show notes, videos, and everything social media.